good evening, or morning, or afternoon, or 3 p.m. snack, or recess. The world's a little topsy-turvy right now, isn't it? So, me and a bunch of my friends have been reading books for you guys, and I've got a really cool one today. It's the Dungeon Master Handbook. No. Actually, I have Augie and the Green Knight. It's an awesome tale of a very brave young girl, the Knights of the Round Table, and science and magic all combined together. It was one of Ian's favorites when he was a kid, and, well, I'll be reading to you over the next couple of nights until we finish it. It's a bit of a hefty book. So, if you want to follow along, the author is Zach Weinersmith, and, well, he's offering it right now on his website for free, so I'll add the link to the PDF in the description, and you're welcome to follow along with me. Let's read together. Because, when things get a little crazy, everyone loves a good story, right? Print's a little small, so... well, glasses it is. Let's get started. Augie and the Green Knight. It's by Zach Weinersmith, and I'll show you the art. It's illustrated by somebody named Boulet. Or Bullet. Shrug. So let's see if we can get through the first couple chapters tonight. And I'm going to start with chapter 1. Was the noise coming out of Augie's mouth. The local news had just declared school canceled due to a freak snowstorm. Augie rubbed her palms together as she eyed the gathering clouds. Snow! 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 She incanted. Blanket my foes. Yes, it's that kind of book. Mom and Dad's bosses had not canceled work, since today was not Armageddon, and now it was too late to get a babysitter. At least it was too late to get one for Augie. It might have been possible to get a babysitter for some other child. Augie's father had already called every babysitter in the area, and all had said no. That may have been because it was 5 a.m, but it also may have been because the sound of Augie cackling and chanting as her father tried to explain what a well-behaved child she was. When the babysitters asked about the insane laughter, Dad insisted it was just an insane goose that had wandered into the house. But since everyone knows geese don't yell, "It's mine! It's all mine at last!" Dad got no takers. Augie's parents both had important presentations at their offices that day, which could not be missed. Presentations, in case you've never done them, are sort of like spoilers on sedans. Or my van. Most people are pretty sure they do something, but can't say specifically what, and the people who insist on having them are a little weird. Mind you, Augie knew all about spoilers, but whenever she started talking about downforce equation, adults stopped the conversation in order to praise her intelligence, which made it all but impossible to speak. "Do you think," said her mother, unconsciously clutching her blouse, "do you think we should leave Augie at home alone for just a few hours?" Augie noted. They both looked at her. She was a very smart child, but even more concerning, she was very resourceful. Dad cleared his throat, which is automatically how dads put on their dad voice into operational mode. "Augie, you're a good girl," said Dad. This was more hope than truth. You're 9.5. 9, she corrected. She hated how adults never rounded down to the nearest integer when talking to children. 9, said Dad. He then spoke very slowly and very seriously. Your mother and I will be away for a few hours, and you'll need to stay out of trouble. We're going to lock the doors, and you are not to go outside. Can you do that? Yes, she said. Will you do that? Asked Mom. Replied Augie. Let's take her sled with us, said Dad. And that was chapter 1. Chapter 2. Augie slipped her hand into the sleeve of her oversized sweater and squeaked its wool across the window by the front door. Through the porthole she'd made in the frost, she watched the dark brown Buick push away through the snow and turn the corner past the mailbox. Once Mom and Dad were out of sight, Augie ran around the house to her room. It was a small room, made smaller by her collection of important things. For example, she had 14 books of pressed flowers, though the jury was still out as to whether she enjoyed pressed flowers for the beauty or for the crushing. Perhaps it was both, but as far as I know, there isn't yet a word in the English that conveys the combination. Footnote. Some possible options are crushlessness, smashination, and pummel grace. Augie also had a small family of gerbils, whom she trusted to spin wheels connected to a dynamo, which powered a rock tumbler, which supplied rocks for her tank of mangrove rivulas. She was a big fan of these rivulas since their offspring are clones, and having an army of clones is an excellent way to ward off bullies at school. Footnote. Mangrove rivulas are, to be technical, isogenic, and then only under certain circumstances. However, most bullies are unaware of the distinction. On her bed was a furry yellow blanket with large dark eyes into the top, modeled after the Io moth. Footnote. Autemnus Io, a beautiful insect found in North America. The fake eyes serve to ward off common bedroom predators such as bed goblins and closet bears. She knocked the complete works of Geoffrey Chaucer off the dresser to get a better look out her curtained window. She'd done this so many times that a number of pages had been lost. This book is so old, some of the pages are stuck together, rendering the title completely inaccurate. Out the window was the forest. It was an old forest, originally named after George Washington, but he hadn't been there in years, so she'd renamed it Augusta Woods. She inhaled the cold air near her window and smiled. The woods needed her. She went to her closet for a field naturalist kit. It contained the following items. 1 guide to local flora and fauna, 1 pair of sports goggles, 1 scarf, 1 hat with ear flaps, given to her by her aunt, the biologist, and therefore endowed with all of her powers. 1 jacket, 2 mittens, mathematically equivalent to 1 mitten pair, mathematically equivalent to 1/2 of a quadramitten, mathematically equivalent to 1/4 of an octamitten. 1 net, 1 compass, 1 watch, 1/2 of a quadraboots, 1 spyglass, 1 motion detector, 60 candy bars, no caramel. 1 backpack, 1 gas burner, 1 hot plate, 1 handkerchief, 30 spare candy bars, no caramel. 1 teacup, 1 canteen, 1 pair of noise-canceling earbuds to be used in case of any people of Mom's generation playing their music. 1 lantern, powered by the user's choice of battery, hand crank, or photovoltaics, and 1 Augie hand of tea leaves. 1 Augie hand is currently about equal to 1/3 dad hand or mom hand. She forced up the window, threw her bulging pack over the side, and leapt out into the cold morning. Across the field were the beautiful, mysterious trees. Footnote: mysterious may sound a bit fanciful, but roughly speaking, a 100-acre plot of woods produced 1 ton of green biomass every single day. When was the last time you changed by a ton in one day? And that was Chapter 2. Chapter 3. As Augie ran on through the snow and pressed on between the trees, she was surprised to feel the air growing warmer and warmer, as if in her excitement she'd outrun the snow. The forest was green beautiful, and red beautiful, and yellow beautiful, and she knew that just beyond the Augusta brush there was a blue, beautiful creek. She liked the feeling of being in a complete ecosystem. Flies buzzing, spiders spinning, squirrels hopping, mossing. Here was a perfect fall day, the kind of day when time kicks back, relaxes, and lets you know that this day doesn't have to count, so you may as well enjoy it. The wind murmured through the trees and branches, strong enough to make Augie's hair dance in front of her face, but gentle enough to make her shiver. She relished each crunch of leaf, hoot of owl, and squawk of her lungs as she pretended she was a lizard. This was a favorite pastime of hers. But don't judge too harshly. I bet you're just as weird when no one's looking. It was about an hour into her trek that Augie noticed something strange. She'd been through the Augusta woods hundreds of times. She knew the genus and species of everything from the animalia to the plantae to the fungus to the otherwisies. But there was a tree she did not recognize. It was thick and tall and needled, much like a pine. But unlike a pine, the bark was a dark shade of green. Blue-green lichens grew up its trunk, not in random clumps, but in little curls and curves, as if painted by a child. She walked towards the tree, but somehow it seemed to stay the same distance away. She walked faster, but even as other trees passed her, the strange tree never seemed to change position. So she walked around it in a circle, which was stranger still. The side which she first saw of the tree was the side she saw at every angle. It was as if the whole world were a giant wheel, and this one odd tree was at its hub. Augie adjusted her sports goggles. She was frustrated. It was one thing to defy the laws of biology, but defying the laws of geometry was downright, I'm going to guess, downright condescending. Augie removed 1/4 of her quadrimitten and picked up a heavy gray rock from the ground. She threw it at the tree, and it made a loud, hollow thunk as it scattered a patch of green bark. "Oh," said a deep voice, deep as thunder, deep as the forest. "Who throws a rock at a mystery tree?" it shouted with indignation. Augie pointed a finger at a nearby squirrel who scurried under a fallen branch. "Can't I have just one day as a sense-defying mystery tree without getting rocks thrown at me?" Augie pointed accusingly at a sparrow and mouthed, "It was her." The sparrow looked back in irritation and fluttered away. The green tree's needles retracted into its branches, which retracted into its limbs, which retracted into its trunk. Its roots surged out and pressed down into the ground, lifting its entire body up, which was now shaped like a large and rather rotund man of middle age. "Ma," he shouted. He continued. "It's nice to meet you, good day. I'm the Green Knight. And that was chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Green Knight was a giant. His skin was a brown shade of green, with little freckles, which on closer inspection proved to be mushrooms. His hair and beard were quite long, made of moss, studded with pine cones, acorns, little bones, and what appeared to be a fishbowl with a small eel in it. The eel looked reserved but friendly. The Green Knight had a great green belt around his waist, made of bark, and down his back was a matching barked cape. He wore no shoes, but the moss on top of his feet proved ample covering, and his toenails reached far past the tips of his big, round toes. He wore a kilt made of tangled vines, and on his head was a small cap with 3 giant antlers. His shirt was a green wool sweater. "That's a nice sweater," said Augie. "My mum made it," said the giant with pride. "Who's your mum?" "A green sheep, obviously." Augie didn't entirely agree that this was obvious, but she was willing to let it go since the Green Knight, she now noticed, had a massive green axe tied to his back. "What brings you to my forest?" he asked. "It's my forest," she said. "Oh, is it? Then how come my name's on it?" He pointed to a nearby oak, in which was written, "Mr. the Green Knight, Esquire." She pointed to a nearby birch, on which was written, "Augusta Frankenmacher, Esquire." The Green Knight stroked his beard, which frightened the reserved but friendly eel. "Well," said the Green Knight, "it seems we have equal claim here. What say we split it 50-50? He put his hand out to shake. Augie removed a slug from it, then shook. "So," she said, "would you like to bike with me? My parents are away for a few hours, so the laws of humanity may make no claim upon me." "Why, I'd be delighted," said the Green Knight. "I can show you the creatures of the forest." Augie figured she knew the forest better than this strange green giant, thanks to the benefits of modern science. She said as much, but the giant just laughed and said, "Why is dawn forever telling the dusk how to shine?" Augie lowered her eyebrows. She didn't like the metaphor. "The dawn reads a lot," she said. The Green Knight picked her up by her jacket and placed her on his back. She leaned against the axe, which was damp but warmed by the body heat of the giant. The giant walked through the forest with Augie atop him, and his footsteps were surprisingly quiet despite his big, wobbly strides. Soon they came across a buttercup growing all by itself in a patch of soft dirt that had somehow escaped the cold. "Now," said the Green Knight, "if you are so very smart, Augusta of the Dawn, what is that?" Breathlessly, she replied, "That is, of course, Ranunculus bulbosus, commonly known as a St. Anthony's turnip." "Wrong," said the giant. "Ha! Wildly wrong. No, that flower's name is Frank. It's commonly known as Frank." "What?" said Augie. No, that is Ranunculus bulbosus, commonly known as St. Anthony's turnip. The green giant sat down on his haunches, almost causing Augie to fall off. "Hey, Frank," he said to the flower. He turned his head and smirked at Augie. But the flower, like many flowers, did nothing. The sedentary lifestyle of flowers is well documented. "Frank," he shouted. But the only sound was the burbling of the creek and the echo of "Frank, Frank, Frank, Frank." through the trees. The Green Knight was beginning to look embarrassed. He blushed purple, then breathed in and shouted, "Frank!" The giant was so loud that the trees shook, and a whole canopy of dry leaves floated down, yellow and orange. But the buttercup barely wobbled. Augie thrust out her chest triumphantly and smiled at the giant. The giant flicked the flower with his pinky. "Oi!" said the flower. "I'm sleeping!" Augie's jaw dropped. "What do you want?" said the flower. "Oh, well, I guess I'm up now," it whined. Frank stretched out its leaves and inhaled through its stomata. "What's your name?" said the Green Knight. "It's Frank," said the irritable buttercup. "And don't act like you don't know it's Frank, because I heard you say the name a bunch of times before you flicked me." The giant looked at Augie. "See?" Augie drew herself up, ready to defend her scientific integrity. "I was talking about its nomenclature, its classification. It is of the genus Ramunculus, and it is specifically a bulbous Ramunculus." The giant patted her head like she was a particularly unintelligent pet. "It's Frank. Specifically, it's Frank." "I'm talking," she said, starting to spit and slur her words together. "I'm talking about what type it is. You may have a name for this particular flower, but it's hardly informative to have a name for every single one." "I'm not the one who has a name for him," said the giant. "It's just his name. His mom named him Frank." At this point, the giant noticed another flower about 10 yards away and called out, "Oh, hey, Mrs. Glendower!" She didn't reply. By this time, Augie had realized the problem. The Green Knight system was actually quite useful for him, since he knew all the plants individually. In fact, Augie had a similar system for people. After all, if someone asked you who you or your parents were, it'd be rather strange for you to say, "Oh, they're humans," or "Oh, they're elves," or "Oh, they're, cyclopses," or half. But still, she refused to call a flower Frank. The very idea was absurd. So she decided to simply drop the topic and be courteous. "Nice to meet you," she said. "I'm sorry we woke you up." Frank made a certain gesture with his petals that you or I don't recognize, but which is really quite vulgar in the vegetable kingdom. The giant and Augie took it as an indication that they should leave. And so they departed for the creek. They were about to meet an elderly rock who swore that he was the one who defeated Goliath, despite some young brat getting all the credit. But the Green Knight realized he was running very late for an appointment. "Where are you going?" asked Augie. "I have to be at King Arthur's court," he said. "They don't know it yet, but we're playing the beheading game for Christmas." "The what?" "The beheading game." "Do people get beheaded in the beheading game?" "Ho, ho, ho!" the giant laughed. "Ha, ha, ha! Oh my, no, not many." Augie was about to ask about the not many part, for no matter how Christmas had wandered into autumn, when the Green Knight pressed one of his nostrils, then blew through the other, making a noise somewhere between a bugle and a didgeridoo. "Wubba wubba wubby!" Augie looked down from a perch atop the giant as the ground beneath them rose up and formed into a giant green pony. Every bit of it was green. Its hair was blue-green moss. Its eyes were the color of pine needles at night. Its hooves were like unpolished jade, and the saddle of its harness were bark, the color of a bullfrog's back. "Kya!" shouted the knight, and they were off galloping through the woods. Augie tried doing the nose trick to see if she too could summon a pony, but she just ended up needing the handkerchief from her kit. Although the green's horse great hooves must have weighed 50 pounds apiece, they plodded gently against the spongy forest ground. On they went, dashing over the streams and brooks, into sinkholes, and out through caves, up hills and down valleys. Augie watched the sun fall and fall and fall, and tried to think of excuses to give her parents to explain why she was riding around on a giant green axeman well past her bedtime. Nothing sprang to mind, so she decided to relax a little and enjoy herself. "What's the horse's name?" she asked. "Frank," said the Green Knight. Augie began to wonder about the naming system in this strange land when, in the distance, the warm red lights of a castle's windows rose into view. And that's where we will stop for today. See you soon.